Hello, and welcome to my tutorial on how to draw this piece called Kindred Spirits in coloured pencils. For those over on Patreon, I will have the 1 hour version of this available. If you're keen to see a longer version, hop over there and subscribe to my channel. Now I'm just starting off by getting in the background in this corner of the portrait. And I'm doing that by using some browns and reds. And I've just gone over in some light layers, blended it out, and then repeated to make the colour a bit more intense. And then I started on the hair. At this point, I'm just sketching in where all the shadowed areas are with dark sepia before going over it with my other browns. And I'm using a mixture of Caput Mortem Violet, Caput Mortem Indian Red, Burnt Ochre, Burnt Sienna, Walnut Brown, and Nougat. So there's quite a lot of different browns that I mix in, and it just helps to create that mix in the hair. So it's not just all one colour. There is so many different shades that go to make the hair vibrant and realistic. And when working on hair, don't try and do every single strand. Focus on the clumps of hair and the shadows between the clumps of hair. So you're not trying to draw every individual strand. Otherwise, it just will look wiry and not realistic. You want to sort of find the way the clumps flow with the different waves and curls in the hair and focus on that, and where the light bounces on the hair. Now just starting on the face, and I've done a layer of cinnamon and then start adding in the shadows with light flesh, medium flesh, and Benetton red, as well as a little bit of the dark sepia. And that one there is a Caput Mortem Violet, just darkening it up a little bit. Then I've gone over with a layer of the Luminance white pencil, and I find that gives it a nice sheen over the skin, especially once it gets blended out with the odourless solvent, and it just makes it a lot smoother than what it is otherwise. I do tend to make the skin a little bit darker when I do that, because when you add the white, it lightens up the colour a lot. When creating portraits, I find that you really need to pay attention to your reference photo, to where you put the shadows on the face. You can change the shape of the face, the jawline, the cheekbone, and change how the face looks very easily by moving the shadow just slightly, and then the face will no longer be as recognizable as the face that you're trying to draw. So it's very important to get those shadows in the right spots. Also, when blending with odourless solvents, do be aware that the more you have on your brush, it can actually lift more pigment off and make it appear splotchy. So when working on skin, which you want smooth, be careful of putting too much solvent on your brush. You want to try and not get that splotchy look. It doesn't matter so much with fur or in the hair, but on the skin definitely be careful, and make sure that you wipe the excess solvent off onto some paper towel before using it on your artwork. And this is more important on the later layers. On the first few layers, it doesn't matter when you blend, you can use more, but on the later layers, when you build it up with quite a few different layers, then you do want to be careful not to get that splotchy look. Now onto the lower background, and this is just a mix of browns and greens and greys, and just building up those layers to get the texture that I want. I'm not too focused on details in this area, as the focus is not on the background at all, it's on the girl and the fox. So I'm not focused too much on how close to the reference photo. I'm quite happy with making little alterations in that area. And that's the thing with reference photos, is you don't always have to follow it. There's certain areas in a piece where you do need to keep track of, keep close to what the reference photo has. So things like the face. The hair, not so much. You can change the hair if you want. It's quite easy to change where the different clumps go. And same with the background. You don't need to focus so completely to get the shadows in the right spots, because it's more random, so it doesn't need to be exact. The hands is an area that I would say follow the reference photo. The hands are one of those sections of people's bodies which are quite hard to get right. I've always found it a challenge to get them to look right, so do follow the reference photo to get the shadows in the right spots on the hands, especially around the knuckles. And just building up the layers there and darkening the shadows a bit before blending it. So there's lots of different layers, then blending, then more layers, and then blending, and you just build up the intensity of colour that way, and always keeping your layers light so you don't flatten the tooth of the paper, otherwise you won't be able to put additional layers down. Now onto the fox. I layered the sort of the base colours down to get the which I used the Odourless Solvent to smush that around a bit so that the little white flecks in the paper didn't show through, and then going over that with the actual texture of the fur. And just doing a nice even layer in that section, and getting the shadows in as well. And if you've got enough pigment on the paper, then the solvent blends out really well and smoothly. When you don't have enough pigment on the paper, then the solvent won't blend it as easily. With fur, always pay attention to what direction the fur is going in the reference photo. So you don't have to get the fur exact. All those little strokes are not in the same places as on the reference photo, but the direction and length of the fur is correct. So the length of fur of your pencil strokes determines how long the fur looks. So if you want longer fur, like here on the tail, I'm making longer pencil strokes, whereas on the back of the fox, I wanted short pencil strokes because the fur was shorter in that area. And just layering it up in lots of different browns. And just continuing to layer up and using the white to add in highlights on top of the fur and in the hair as well. Then onto the shoulder area and just building in those shadows, adding a bit of the cream in there to give it a slight yellow, pale yellow tinge. And just slowly building up those layers. And there's a bit of Primrose, which is a luminance pencil. It's a lovely opaque cream. And I found with the folds in the cloth, I didn't worry too much about getting them in all the right places. I also altered the waistband on the dress a bit and just focused on getting the general movement of the folds going in the right direction. Sometimes you do have to be careful, because if you move some folds, it can actually change the shape of the body. But in this particular photo, I didn't have to have all the folds in exactly the right places. It was just the way that the person was lying, because the dress was kind of billowing onto the ground. It didn't really matter if the folds were in the correct spots or not. Just generally in the right way. I like it when you're following a reference photo, but you don't have to follow it exactly. It makes it so much easier. And then darkening up some of those shadows. Now onto the fox. Just started by getting the nose in, and just using black, and then I had a bit of purple on that as well before doing the first layers on the snout with the different browns and blending that out to get that smooth undercolor. And then on the white areas on the snout, I've gone over with warm grey, 4 and 2, and just done little tiny pencil strokes to get the texture of fur with it, but not covering up the white too much, because you do want to still get some of that white coming through. I've sketched in the ears as well now, and you do pay attention to ears. You want to get them the right shape. They're quite complicated on animals and on people as well. I find that they don't seem to make any sense when you're drawing them. There's quite a lot of folds in the skin that go in all sorts of directions. But if you get them wrong, it can make the face look like it's not quite right. So do pay attention to the ears. I actually found matching the skin on this hand a little bit difficult to try to match it to the skin on the other hand, which is the disadvantage of doing it at a different time and having done the fox in between, because I couldn't quite remember what I did with the layers to get it exactly the same. And I mean, it worked out in the end, but it did take a little bit more effort trying to match it. So if you do find that you're having that difficulty, you may find that you want to do all the sections of the skin at the same time, rather than doing, say, the fox in between or the clothes, so that you get the skin matching. So if you look at the picture, you can see that it's slightly duller, and yeah, that's because I was having that issue. And then onto the last section of her clothing, and I love how the different colours sort of merge together in this piece, and with the yellow and creams I put in the clothing, and how it merged in with the pinks and the reds in this piece. It was such a beautiful photo to work from. And to bring out all the highlights in this piece, what I do is I get the titanium white powder from brush and pencil and mix it with their touch-up texture, just a few drops of that, and then I paint it on using a liner brush, and that just really brings out some of those highlights, especially in the white fur and on the ear and on the tail. And then I've used it to put in some highlights on the face and brighten that lower hand that was a bit darker than the other hand. So I've tried to match those a bit better. And that is this for this particular piece, Kindred Spirits. I had so much fun creating this one. I also loved how this one turned out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.